Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. This guy's been a longtime friend of mine. He's one of the great trainers. He is a Hall of Famer. He is Claude R. McGaughey III, known to the world as Shug McGaughey, and he joins us now from Saratoga, New York. Shug, thanks for being on the Horse Racing Show.
Oh, thank you, Kenny.
We do go back a long way, don't we? A couple of guys from Kentucky.
We do. Two guys from Kentucky.
Who both, coincidentally, makes a living outside of Kentucky for the most part. I work outside of Kentucky all the time, and you've kind of found a home. You're kind of an adopted New Yorker.
Well, I got the job offer in 1985 to come up here and work for the Phippses, and it was a good offer, and I've been here ever since. I enjoy getting back to Kentucky on occasions to race at Keeneland and Churchill, and I still got family there, and my oldest son works for Keeneland, so I like New York, I like Belmont Park, I like where I live, and it's all good, but like I say, I always like to get back to Lexington and Louisville.
You're at one of the most beautiful places right now at Saratoga, and what does that Saratoga meet like to you? You know, we've all had a chance to be there, and it's a special place, and what does it mean to you even after all these years, Shug?
Well, it's good. We've got a great facility here that I enjoy training out of right here on Oklahoma, by the Oklahoma training track. The fans are enthusiastic. There's a lot of them, which is not really what we see back on Long Island at Belmont and Aqueduct. So it's an enthusiastic bunch. I mean, their stakes program, their 2-year-old program is really, really, really good. So it's fun to watch the new 2-year-olds, and it's also, the stake races are always high caliber, and they're fun to watch also. And, hopefully you can participate in them.
I was looking at your career. I'm going to miss somebody in here, but looking at like Lure and Personal Ensign and My Flag and Storm the Flag and Heavenly Prize and Inside Information, Seeking the Gold. That's how you get to the Hall of Fame, isn't it?
Well, I was lucky that Phipps has provided me with, Lure was Clavering, provided me with a lot of nice horses, and, they performed good, and they were sure fun to have around, and 3 or 4 of those that you mentioned are in the Hall of Fame now, their own selves. So, when you're lucky enough to be provided that kind of animal, then good things are going to happen.
I think I didn't mention one, and that was on purpose, thinking back to the 89 Belmont and Easy Gore, who has been one of your favorites. I don't know if he's the favorite, but certainly a special horse to you.
Well, he was. He was a career maker kind of horse. He was a champion 2-year-old, and then he came out and he won the Swale and the Wood Memorial and the Gotham. He set the track record. He was the 5th and 2nd off the world record in the Gotham. And, then we were second in the Derby and just beat second in the Preakness and won the Belmont, which was my first classic win, and also Mr. Phipps's first classic win. And so that made it pretty special for both of us, along with Easy Gore himself. So, then we went on and finished up here with the Whitney and the Travers. He won the Woodward and Jockey Club Gold Cup, and then kind of unfortunately was second to Sunday Silence in the Breeders' Cup. But, he was a special horse for not only for me, but for the Phipps family, and that's what was the most important thing.
Second only to Wayne Lukas in Breeders' Cup wins with 9. The Breeders' Cup has always been a showcase for the great horses and trainers. You have had many moments, including the back-to-back mile with Lure. Again, that's another thing. You can look back. It's hard to pick for me, it's hard to pick the great Shug McGaughey moment at the Breeders' Cup. There's been so many.
Well, the great Shug McGaughey moment in the Breeders' Cup was Personal Ensign. She won.
I thought that might be it.
12 in a row, and she didn't handle the track that day, but her class and her ability made her get up to beat Winning Colors, who had won the Derby, and Goodbye Halo, who had won the Kentucky Oaks. So, that was a special day, but they're all special. Just be able to, Breeders' Cup win we've had, more seconds than wins, which, I'd like to turn that around here in the future, but we've we've had some fun days. It's been fun to be able to participate in the Breeders' Cup at a high level.
That 1988 distaff we're just talking about with Personal Ensign, to me, the best race I've ever seen. Maybe just from personal standpoint, obviously, as you're talking about, but just from an actual fan race, I don't know if you could find a better race. There's certainly been some great races, exciting races, but I think that's about as good as you'll see.
Well, you'd have a hard time beating it. It was a good field at Churchill Downs, and with all that was on stake, she had a huge following, and for her to get up like that to make it 13 out of 13, and that was going to be the last one, and so it was a very, very special. It was a special race, and ended up being a special race.
And then you go on, and then you do something that's pretty rare. You get daughter and granddaughter, my flag and storm flag flying, keeping the Personal Ensign thing going, and they're all great runners. Yeah,
they were. It was, the grandmother won the Breeders' Cup, the daughter won the Breeders' Cup, and the granddaughter won the Breeders' Cup. So, and they were all good fillies. Storm flag flying came back and beat Rachel Alexander here in the Personal Ensign. She won the Shoe V, and my flag. She came back, and I think she won the Bonnie Miss and the Ashland. The Coaching Club Oaks was third in the Belmont. So she was pretty special in her own right. And obviously she was a decent producer when she produced Storm Flag Flying.
Your relationship with the Phipps family, there are a few trainers, especially in this day and age with so many, as I like to call them, almost like conglomerates that come in with all the syndicates that go on out there to get a lot of people involved. Yours with the Phipps family, and as you mentioned earlier, of course, with Claiborne Farm and the Hancock family, that's pretty rare in today's training community, isn't it, Shug?
Well, it is. You don't see it too much. They've been, as I said, over to Hall of Fame today, talking about Mr. Phipps, their loyalty. This has been a lot to me. It's passed down through the Phippses, through Mr. Phipps, Denny Phipps, and now hopefully through, Ogden and Daisy and their mother and sisters. And then also with Mr. Janney, too. He's a Phipps, but his last name's Janney. And he's been a very special guy to me, too, not only, with the racing part of it, which I really enjoyed doing with him. And he enjoys the training in the morning very much. But personally also, just our conversations daily, or not daily, but 3 or 4 times a week are always special. And he's coming up here tomorrow to, for his jockey club stuff, but he'll be up here around 7:30 and he'll be out here first thing every morning. And, it's, those are pretty special times for me to be able to bend his ear a little bit about not only the industry, but, what's going on in the world.
And, that's the special part of it. It's got to be more than a business. There has to be that passion in there to keep it going on the part of an owner, doesn't it?
Oh, I think so. I think they've got to enjoy it. I think that there's a lot of people, as you mentioned earlier, in these conglomerates that are just investors that don't enjoy it and aren't going to come out here in the mornings and might show up if they've got a horse in the Travers. But, in a lot of ways, those guys don't really sort of interest me. My people are, most all have got, a big interest in the game with the Phippses and Janney and Joe Allen, and now a few for John and Anthony, who I trained for years ago, gave me a great start years ago. And Andrew Rosen, who's been a friend for a long time, and I've got 6 or 7 fillies for, and so, I'd rather have sort of a one-on-one kind of conversation and operation than look up and there'd be 100 people in the winner's circle.
Yeah. Talking with Hall of Fame trainer, Eclipse Award winner, Breeders' Cup champs along the way, and of course the 2013 Derby with Orb. Shug McGaughey, being a Kentuckian, not that far from Churchill Downs growing up, the Kentucky Derby with Orb 6 years ago. I remember having the pleasure of interviewing you right after that race, Shug, and I think it's emotional a little bit for both of us, obviously for you, but for me, because I know how much it meant to you as a Kentuckian to get that Derby win?
Well, it was special. It was something that, I'd sort of dreamed about. And every year when you got your 2-year-old in, you thought, well, could this be the one? It was a race that, obviously was on my bucket list in a big way, but I'm sure everybody else that trains also, that's something that they dream about, is having that opportunity. And I'd finished second in it, and I'd run some others, not many that had been competitive, but one was third, and it was just it was a special time. I thought that we brought a really, really nice horse in there. He had a good 3-year-old year, and I was nervous while we were there, but I was more excited than anything else. And excitement went on to that day, and to be able to win, and have the Janney family involved, the Phipps family involved, and then my family involved too, made it special. And I'm a big fan of his jockey Joel Rosario in a big way. I think he's not only a tremendous guy with a tremendous sense of humor and personality, but he's a guy I like to be around. And I think he rides our horses really well, and he rode him really well.
Your relationships with jockeys over the years, anybody others besides Joel that kind of stands out? A friendship develops, some things like that along the way, as well as winning a few races for you?
Well, a lot of them. I mean, I'm a special fan of Pat Daves. I thought he was terrific. We had a lot of luck together over the years. We didn't have a social relationship, which I don't really any of them. But
I don't think Pat stays out too late, Shug.
No, he didn't stay out too late. But he was a tremendous, tremendous rider, and like I say, we had a lot of luck together. But I mean, you can go down the line with Johnny Velasquez, Jose Ortiz, sort of now, and Javier, and a lot of them that were top jockeys and special guys. And I remember when I first came to New York, I wasn't going to ride Angel Cordero. Well, Angel Cordero schooled me a couple times. I said, we better get on this bandwagon. So we had some luck together too. Won the Breeders' Cup with Dancing Spree, and so he rode Versailles Treaty, won the test in the Belmont here, not the Belmont, the Alabama here, and special little guy. We've got a friendship to this day. But the one that really stands out is Pat Day. I thought he was a special guy, and I thought he was a special, special rider.
We're going to talk to him later. I'll bet he says the same thing about you, because you all did have that great relationship and that winning relationship. You're talking about derbies. The fact that you make it to a derby or make it to a belt, make it to a classic race, get a horse into Belmont. I think people understand, certainly in the game they understand a little bit. I hope they do at least, just how tough it is to get there. He's taken for granted. Can you get to the Super Bowl every year? At least can you get to the championship every year? You'd say, well, if we can hit like 20% of the time, we're going to have a pretty good team. In horse racing, 20% of the time you're doing great just to even make it that far.
Well, it's a difficult chore. I mean, chances are they've got to run 2 or 3 times as a 2-year-old to get that experience. And really, when you start out your 3-year-old year, you don't get a chance too much to give them too much of a break. As the Triple Crown prep races all start out pretty early. I mean, Gulfstream, they run the first one, the Mucho Macho Man or something, first part of January. Mm-hmm. And their series continues. So it's very difficult for the horses, and for the trainers and owners. They just got to sit back and say, we just got to be patient and let this kind of come to us, because if you try to force it, it probably ain't going to work.
You talk about patience. You're doing that as you get ready for the Travers coming up, the Midsummer Derby at Saratoga, and you have Code of Honor, so good in the Kentucky Derby, and you've been patient with this horse. You've waited to the right moments, it appears, and he had a great run in the Derby, and we all know all that happened around the Derby, but You coming into the Travers with him now. How's the training going for him leading up to this race?
Well, I thought his Dwyer on 4th of July weekend was a really good race, and I thought it showed that, not going through the rigors of the Preakness and the Belmont probably paid off. He was a late May foal. Always was sort of immature, both physically and mentally. And, really after the Derby, I could just sort of see him coming and coming and coming. And when we ran him in the Dwyer, I'd have been awful disappointed if he had to run a really good race. And he did run a really good race. And, I decided to skip the Jim Dandy. It was back in 3 weeks because that could have been a wrong. And, he's done everything what we wanted since we've been up here. His works have been good. He had a good work here on Sunday morning. And I feel really good where we stand. And we're looking forward to August the 24th and seeing what happens.
Shug, you mentioned the Dwyer. He wins that. You give him some time now to get ready for this. This is a 3-year-old scene out there, and I guess maximum security, of course, with what he's doing. It's probably moved to the leaderboard, let's say. But it's still a wide-open 3-year-old season. I see it, and the Travers could play a huge part in how it shakes out even more.
Well, I think you're definitely right. I mean, a few of the Derby winner and the Preakness winner and the Belmont winner are all gone. So, we really can't think too much about them. But, what's left, I think is pretty formidable. And, I think the second half of the year is going to sort of prove out to which one survived and made the grade. And I think that's a whole lot of what people got to look at. They can't look at a one-race scheme. They got to look at, what horse survived the battles and continued on and was competitive in the races and was able to win some of the big races. And this is kind of, especially this year, this is kind of where it starts. I mean, last year in American Pharaoh's year, winning the Triple Crown, that pretty much sealed that. And so, we'll just see what happens as we go along.
Talk with Shug McGaughey, the Hall of Fame trainer. What a career he has had. Somewhere along the line, Shug, did somebody give you some great advice, or a couple of people give you some great advice that you've taken to heart and you've never forgotten?
Well, there's 2 or 3 things. I listened to Mr. Whiteley and David Whiteley quite a bit on advice. And, 2 things. When I got in the Hall of Fame, Wayne Lukas gave the speech, and he said, you can't be afraid to lose. And I use that all the time. And another time, it was in 1988 Breeders' Cup at Louisville. It was cold and raining. I just finished second in the Classic with Seeking a Goal to Ali Shiva. And I'm walking back by myself and kind of got my head down. And personal incident 1, Easy Gore was second. Seeking a Goal was second. I hear a voice behind me go, what kind of day did you have today, boy? And I said, 1-1 was 2 seconds. And he said, man, you had a good day, huh? And it was Charlie Whittingham. And those are 2 things that it sort of stuck the whole time when I get, maybe you said, well, should I run or shouldn't I run? If everything's going right, you can't be afraid to lose. And the other is that sometimes you've got to look this in perspective to when a guy like that says something to you like that, you better listen instead of thinking you're going to win all of them, that you had a good day, boy. And that was 2 of the things that I think about quite a bit. And then, my experience with the Whiteleys and watching them. I remember sitting on a footstool, Mr. White, after we fed, Mr. Whiteley came over and sat down and he said, you kind of like this, don't you, boy? And I said, yeah, I do. And he said, well, let me tell you one thing. He said, for every good thing that happens, 20 bad ones are going to happen. So be prepared. And so, when I see one out here maybe not walking just right, I have to think back that that's one of the 20 that weren't good, but let's fix it to make it a good one. So.
Well, growing up in Lexington, I guess, was this like a thing that you knew you were going to do early on? You were going to be a trainer or be in the horse business in some capacity?
Not really, Kenny. I was always really, really excited about the atmosphere of Keeneland, and that's where I'd go. My parents were not at all involved, but my father would take me out there on occasion, and I liked that, and I liked the betting part of it a little bit. And, so, you know, then I would go after school when I was able to drive. I'd drive out there some and get the next one. And I'd pick up kind of the guts of the old daily racing form that people had thrown down or put in a garbage can or something. I'd take it home and just read the articles and try to handicap some of the, you know, races at Hawthorne or wherever they were. And, you know, that I was going to college and I drew a high draft lottery number in the early 70s. And I asked my parents, you know, how about let me stay out a semester? And they said, that's fine, but you got to get a job. And I had a friend or an acquaintance that I knew that had 8 or 10 horses, cheap horses out at Keeneland. And so I went out there and asked him for a job. And he said, yeah, I'll give you a job. And, you know, I didn't really have much experience. And so I started out as a hot walker, working 7 days a week, all day for $40 a week. And I loved every minute of it. And then after a while, we went to Latonia and I ran one. And I got $60 a week, and it all kind of went from there. But then it sort of all kind of finalized itself when my friend Mike Bell got me on with the Whiteleys, early 70s. Ruffian was the fall of her 2-year-old year.
Yeah. I
went to Camden, rubbed yearlings, and then a little bit into that winter, I kind of took over a barn, and then he sent me to New York with 4 horses. And, you know, then David Whiteley, his son, came back from California, and I stayed up in the barn, was his assistant for 5 or 6 years, which was a tremendous experience. And, you know, then Bill O'Neill and Mike Bell got me hooked up with some people from Abilene, Texas, and kind of went from there.
Well, what a career it's been. 2,000 wins and going on, over 2,000, 250-some graded stakes and going. Shug, you're a great friend. I always enjoy catching up with you, and I really appreciate your time.
Well, Kenny, I consider you the same, and I always enjoy seeing you, and we can rehash a little bit about Kentucky sports and that kind of stuff and how it's doing, and I appreciate you giving me a call.
And there's actually a football team to kind of get excited about now under Mark Stoops, by the way. I
agree. He's done a tremendous job around there, and it's sure been a lot of fun to watch. And my hats off to them. And last year, what a year it was for Kentucky football.
You know, we had Mark on the show last week, Shug, and he owns some race horses. Maybe I'm gonna put him in touch with you.
There you go.
All right, Shug. All the best to you. Good luck with the Code of Honor coming up in the Travers, and we'll catch up again down the road, pal.
Okay, Kenny, I'll be around. Thanks.
Thank you. Hall of Fame trainer Shug McGaughey here on the Horse Racing Show. Coming up next, man, he was talking about Hall of Fame jockey Pat Day. Does it get any better? Stay with us.